"Stop. I'll take care of it." A young voice rang out across the school corridor, freezing everyone in their tracks. Barron Trump, just 12 years old at the time, stepped forward in the middle of a heated argument among his classmates. The tension in the air was palpable, with the teacher struggling to maintain control of the escalating situation. In a moment that stunned everyone, Barron's calm yet authoritative presence diffused the chaos, leaving his peers and teacher in awe. What led to this surprising display of maturity and leadership? As the story unfolds, we'll uncover how this pivotal moment reflects the untold side of a boy often overshadowed by his famous last name. The classroom buzzed with energy as students wrapped up their group activities. Desks were cluttered with papers, markers, and half-finished projects, while the faint hum of conversations filled the room. It was a typical school day, until it wasn't. A misunderstanding between two classmates began to escalate, drawing the attention of others and creating a ripple of unease. The teacher, visibly flustered, tried to regain order, but the situation seemed to spiral out of control. Amid the rising voices and tension, the focus shifted to Barron Trump, sitting quietly at his desk, observing the scene with a calm demeanor. Known for his reserved nature, Barron often stayed out of the spotlight, but this time was different. His classmates, accustomed to his quiet presence, were about to witness a side of him that would leave a lasting impression. What happened next wasn't just unexpected, it was unforgettable. Years later, the teacher who witnessed this moment would recount the story with a mix of pride and admiration. Sitting in a warmly lit interview space, she reflected on the day that forever changed her perspective on one of her most reserved students. "It started like any other day," she began, her voice steady but tinged with nostalgia. "Barron was always polite, attentive, and a bit of an enigma. He didn't seek attention, but you could tell he observed everything." The teacher described how the disagreement between two students quickly escalated, drawing the attention of the entire class. "The room was in chaos," she recalled. Voices were raised, accusations flying back and forth. "I tried to step in, but it was as if they couldn't hear me." That's when Barron stood up. "I'll never forget the way he walked over, calm and collected, and placed himself between the two students," she said. "He didn't yell or command. He just spoke with such clarity and authority that everyone stopped to listen." According to the teacher, Barron didn't take sides but instead focused on understanding what had caused the conflict. He asked questions, listened carefully, and then offered a solution that both students agreed to. "It was remarkable," she added. The story didn't end there. The teacher revealed how Barron's actions that day sparked a ripple effect. "The entire class learned something about empathy and leadership," she said. "But what struck me most was how Barron stayed humble about the whole thing. When I praised him later, he simply said, 'I just wanted to help.'" As the teacher shared more details, her admiration for the young Barron was evident. She described how this moment revealed not just his intelligence, but also his emotional maturity and ability to lead under pressure. "It was a rare quality, especially in someone so young," she concluded. The story became a cherished memory, one that she believed offered a glimpse into the kind of person Barron would grow up to be. A quiet but impactful leader who could make a difference without seeking recognition. The moment Barron Trump stood up from his desk, the atmosphere in the classroom shifted. His quiet demeanor had always been a hallmark of his personality, but today it carried an unspoken weight that demanded attention. As he approached the two students locked in their heated argument, the chatter around the room gradually died down, replaced by a palpable sense of curiosity. Barron didn't raise his voice or gesture dramatically. Instead, he simply positioned himself between the two classmates. His tall frame and calm expression acted as a barrier, not one of intimidation, but of resolution. He met the gaze of each student in turn, pausing for a moment as if assessing the situation. "Can we take a second to breathe?" he said, his voice steady and measured. It wasn't a command, but the suggestion carried enough authority that both students hesitated. In that brief pause, the tension seemed to loosen just enough for dialogue to become possible. Barron addressed the first student. "What's going on? Why are you upset?" His tone was calm but firm, leaving no room for defensiveness. The student began to explain, frustration spilling out in a mix of words and emotions. Barron listened intently, nodding occasionally but never interrupting. When the second student tried to interject, Barron held up a hand, not to silence them, but to ensure that each side had their moment to speak. "Let's hear him out first," he said gently. "Then we'll get to your side." Once the first student had finished, Barron turned to the second and asked the same question, giving them the same focused attention. His ability to stay neutral and genuinely interested in both perspectives was something that caught the entire class off guard. As the two students aired their grievances, it became clear that their disagreement stemmed from a simple misunderstanding. Barron picked up on this quickly, pointing it out in a way that felt less like assigning blame and more like clarifying the facts. "It sounds like you both care about the same thing, but saw it differently," he said. "What if we try looking at it this way?" The moment Barron Trump stood up from his desk, the atmosphere in the classroom shifted. His quiet demeanor had always been a hallmark of his personality, but today it carried an unspoken weight that demanded attention. As he approached the two students locked in their heated argument, the chatter around the room gradually died down, replaced by a palpable sense of curiosity. Barron didn't raise his voice or gesture dramatically. Instead, he simply positioned himself between the two classmates. His tall frame and calm expression acted as a barrier, not one of intimidation, but of resolution. He met the gaze of each student in turn, pausing for a moment as if assessing the situation. "Can we take a second to breathe?" he said, his voice steady and measured. It wasn't a command, but the suggestion carried enough authority that both students hesitated. In that brief pause, the tension seemed to loosen just enough for dialogue to become possible. Barron addressed the first student. "What's going on? Why are you upset?" His tone was calm but firm, leaving no room for defensiveness. The student began to explain, frustration spilling out in a mix of words and emotions. Barron listened intently, nodding occasionally, but never interrupting. When the second student tried to interject, Barron held up a hand, not to silence them, but to ensure that each side had their moment to speak. "Let's hear him out first," he said gently. "Then we'll get to your side." Once the first student had finished, Barron turned to the second and asked the same question, giving them the same focused attention. His ability to stay neutral and genuinely interested in both perspectives was something that caught the entire class off guard. As the two students aired their grievances, it became clear that their disagreement stemmed from a simple misunderstanding. Barron picked up on this quickly, pointing it out in a way that felt less like assigning blame and more like clarifying the facts. "It sounds like you both care about the same thing, but saw it differently," he said. "What if we try looking at it this way?" His solution was straightforward yet effective, rooted in empathy and fairness. He suggested a compromise that acknowledged both students' feelings and offered a path forward. What made his approach remarkable was not just the solution itself, but the way he delivered it, with patience, respect, and an innate ability to diffuse tension. The teacher, watching from the sidelines, marveled at how Barron handled the situation. His actions didn't just resolve the conflict, they set an example for the rest of the class. By showing that listening and understanding could replace anger and confrontation, he shifted the dynamic in the room entirely. As the class settled back into its routine, the teacher couldn't help but replay the events in her mind. She had witnessed countless classroom disputes over her years in teaching, but something about Barron Trump's intervention stood out. It wasn't just what he did, but how he did it. Calm, composed, and remarkably effective. Sitting at her desk after the students had left, she reflected on the incident. What struck her most was Barron's ability to empathize with his peers. He had an uncanny knack for making everyone feel heard without taking sides, a rare quality, especially for someone so young. That's a skill many adults struggle to master, she thought to herself, impressed by his maturity. She remembered how the two students had looked at Barron during the heated exchange. Not with defiance, but with an openness that showed they respected him. It wasn't just his words that calmed them, but the sincerity with which he spoke. His approach wasn't rehearsed or calculated. It came from a place of genuine care for his classmates. The teacher couldn't help but wonder where this wisdom came from. Was it something he had learned at home, perhaps instilled by his family? Or was it simply an innate part of who he was? Either way, it was clear that Barron had a natural ability to lead by example. Later that day, during her break, the teacher shared the story with a colleague. "You wouldn't believe what happened in my class today," she began, recounting the incident with a mixture of awe and pride. Her colleague, equally astonished, remarked, "It's rare to see a student take on that kind of responsibility. He's a natural leader." The teacher nodded, but in her mind, she saw Barron as more than just a leader. He was someone who understood the power of kindness and the importance of listening, a young man wise beyond his years. Reflecting further, she thought about how this moment could inspire others in the classroom. Barron's actions had set a precedent, showing his peers that conflicts didn't have to escalate into hostility. With a little patience and understanding, even the most heated situations could be resolved amicably. As she prepared her lesson plans for the next day, the teacher made a mental note to recognize Barron's efforts, not just as a way to commend him, but to reinforce the value of what he had done. She believed it was important for the entire class to see that small acts of leadership and empathy could have a profound impact. In her heart, the teacher felt a sense of gratitude. Moments like these reminded her why she had chosen this profession, not just to teach academics, but to witness and nurture the growth of her students as individuals. Barron's actions had been a poignant reminder that even in the smallest interactions, there was potential for greatness. That evening, as she closed her classroom door, she carried with her a renewed sense of purpose. She knew she had just witnessed something extraordinary. A glimpse of the potential that lay within her students, waiting to be realized. And in Barron Trump, she saw a young man destined to make a difference, no matter where life took him. When the story of Barron Trump's actions in the classroom surfaced, it didn't take long for it to capture public attention. A fellow teacher, moved by the account, had shared the story during an education forum, and soon it began circulating on social media. Within hours, it became a trending topic, sparking widespread admiration and discussion. The story resonated deeply with people across the country, transcending political divides. Parents applauded Barron's empathy and maturity, commenting that it was an example of the values they wished to instill in their own children. Teachers chimed in as well, praising the rare leadership and emotional intelligence he demonstrated at such a young age. News outlets quickly picked up the story, crafting headlines that highlighted the inspiring nature of Barron's actions. Barron Trump shows remarkable leadership in classroom dispute and empathy in action, how the young Trump heir earned respect beyond his name. Television segments and online discussions were abuzz with analysis of how such moments could inspire other young people to take initiative in fostering understanding among peers. Social media platforms were flooded with heartfelt comments. Many noted that Barron's ability to step into a tense situation and bring about resolution showed a depth of character that was truly commendable. "This is what leadership looks like," one tweet read, garnering thousands of likes. Others shared their own stories of how a single act of kindness had changed their perspectives, connecting their experiences to Barron's. Some critics, as expected, questioned the motives behind sharing the story, suggesting it might be an effort to shape his public image. However, the overwhelming response was positive, with people defending the authenticity of the moment. "This isn't about politics or publicity," one commentator wrote. "It's about a young man showing us all how to handle conflict with grace." The story also sparked a broader conversation about the role of character and empathy in leadership, with educators and child psychologists weighing in. They emphasized how moments like these could serve as powerful teaching tools for other young people, encouraging them to practice empathy and understanding in their own lives. For a few days, Barron Trump became a symbol of hope and potential, reminding the world that even the smallest actions can leave a lasting impact. In a world often divided by conflict, his thoughtful intervention stood as a powerful reminder that understanding and kindness still hold immense value. As the story of Barron Trump's classroom intervention continued to circulate, it began to take on a significance that went beyond the individual moment. It became a symbol of the kind of leadership the public craved, one rooted in empathy, respect, and calm in the face of adversity. Barron's quiet yet powerful act was a reminder that leadership didn't always require grand gestures or attention. Sometimes it was in the small, everyday choices to make things right. This moment also served as a subtle critique of the noisy, often divisive nature of modern discourse. In a time where arguments often escalate quickly, Barron's ability to diffuse tension through understanding was a powerful message. Perhaps the world could stand to embrace more listening, more compassion, and more patience. The public began to reflect on the kind of leaders they admired, questioning whether these qualities should be more highly valued in shaping future generations. In this sense, Barron's actions illuminated the importance of teaching emotional intelligence in schools, showing that empathy and conflict resolution are just as crucial as academics. His gesture inspired both parents and educators to foster environments where children could grow into emotionally well-rounded leaders. What started as a simple classroom moment thus evolved into a broader call to action, a reminder that sometimes the most impactful leadership begins in the most unexpected places, and its effects can ripple out far beyond what anyone anticipates.